Welcome everyone. Starting off a couple minutes early here. Alright, it looks like I am indeed live. For some reason I'm having some random issues with my software 'cause it says that I'm not live yet, but it looks like I am. So, welcome everyone to the stream. I can't believe it's finally here, the start of the NFL season, and it's here. Get used to it. I feel like honestly this year the hype going up into the season was honestly like it came quicker than I'm used to, and it was a little bit jarring because usually I'm used to this whole summer where I'm not doing very much or I'm not working very much, and I am just like waiting, counting down the seconds until the season starts. This year it was pleasant that it came up a little bit quick. I was really busy this summer, but we are here just to kind of give you a little bit of a idea of what the stream's going to be like. I'm going to be just kind of talking about kind of the hype surrounding the season. I am going to be going over my top. I'm going to be sorry for that technical difficulty there. I'm not sure, OBS is being a little bit weird right now. But anyway, we're going to be going over my top 20 quarterbacks list because I was so busy these last couple weeks. I usually make so many more videos ranking quarterbacks and wide receivers, and I do like a top 10 offenses list and everything. Unfortunately, I was not able to get very many of those videos out this year because there was only a couple weeks of a window, and you have to kind of hit that window, and I just was not able to, with my schedule, get that done. So we're going to be doing it today on the stream. I'll do my top 20 quarterbacks list. I'm kind of going to be going over my most exciting matchups of the season, just games I'm really excited to see. And then I'm going to be going over, I'll give you a sneak peek here at my fantasy team that I drafted. I usually only do one team because I just get too jumbled, and I hate when you have to root for a player and also not root for a player at the same time because you're in 5 different leagues, but to each their own. So I'll go over my fantasy team as well, but I'll let a few more people filter in. Let me know in the comments any questions that you have, any comments you want to leave at all. I'll be responding to those as well throughout the stream. But again, start of the season, Chiefs versus the Ravens. If you haven't watched my video that I uploaded today, actually I realized I never posted about that video coming out, so I should post that right now. But yeah, because it came out this morning and I never posted about. I totally forgot to post about it. But a video came out today. I do kind of the same schedule every single week during the NFL season. Basically, on Thursdays, I do a full video going through every single game and just making my picks for who I think is going to win each game. And then on Friday, I go over the Vikings game for that week. And I just kind of go over everything to expect and everything to break down how I think that game's going to go. And then I make a video at the end of the week going over just kind of the best plays, best moments, kind of just the top everything from that last week. So I usually go over like 5 key things that happened in the week previous, and then the cycle starts over again, and I go over the next week's picks. So it's like a 3 or 4 video schedule usually throughout the NFL season, and it's a lot of fun. But I made that video just this morning, so make sure you check that out, and just give me a quick second while I upload or post that I made that video because I totally forgot about that. But it seems to be doing pretty well so far. Actually, you know what? I'll do that after the stream. But again, welcome in to everyone joining. Um, I think the first thing that I will do is I'll kind of just go over my top 20 quarterbacks for the season. This should be this is probably the list that's going to garner the most kind of split opinions on all of it, because I think a lot of people have very firm opinions on how good and how bad certain quarterbacks are. So this is just kind of a list that I felt out. Sometimes you forget about certain things, so this is not a list that I poured over for months trying to devise the perfect list. So please don't have too crazy reactions to this, but we're going to go through 1 through 20. At number 20, I have Derek Carr, and I talked about Derek Carr as being a quarterback that I definitely think could surprise some people this season. I ranked the Saints, I believe, second in the NFC South this year over the Buccaneers, and I said that because I just felt like Baker Mayfield was going to fall off this season. But I do feel like Derek Carr has a lot of potential. It's just, will he stay healthy? And because he can't really ever prove that he is that quarterback again if he's never on the field. So I definitely do think that he's shown flashes over the years when he has the help. And this is a team that has been plagued by injuries for the last few years. If Chris Olave can get back onto the field and consistently stay on the field this season, I feel like there's a good chance that Derek Carr can have a really good season this year. Number 19, Kyler Murray. This is also a quarterback that I think could 100% just shoot up the draft boards this year. I think that he has a ton of potential to get back to that, sophomore season that he had a really good season a few years back. And he never really hit that elite level that people thought he could. And I don't think he's ever going to hit that again. I don't think he has a chance at doing that. But I definitely do think he has a chance of making his way back into the top 15 of quarterbacks in this league. And now he has Marvin Harrison Jr. That will definitely be a big boost because even when DeAndre Hopkins was on the team, one, he barely played while DeAndre Hopkins was on the team, but also it was kind of a weird situation, and the defense was horrible, and he had very little help besides Hopkins, and so this is a good, clean slate for Kyler Murray to come back. He's finally fully healthy. We'll see what he can do. Number 18, now this is my ranking of quarterbacks going into the season. So I do have Baker Mayfield at 18, higher than Derek Carr. I know that's adverse to what I said in that rankings or in that video breaking down all the different teams. Which again, if you haven't seen that video, make sure you check it out. I went through the entire standings predictions. I picked 1, 2, 3, and 4 in each division, and I also put my 1 through 7 for who I thought would be in the playoffs at the end of the year. And I did say I thought Baker Mayfield would have a fall off. But going into the season, I have to put him above Kyler Murray and Derek Carr. He had a very impressive year last year, and he showed a lot of stuff as a leader that I didn't think people expected to see from him. And so we're going to have to see how he does this season. I'm not overly optimistic, which is why I dropped him so far compared to what some other people might have in their rankings. Next up, I have Geno Smith at number 17. And this guy's had a very, very weird career. He started out being completely written off, knocked off of multiple different teams, wound up with the Jets for a while. He was not given a whole lot of chances to succeed with the Jets. He got cut from them, and then he joined the Seahawks, and I don't think anyone was expecting him to win that job even. It's crazy that you have Geno Smith now, and only a few years back we weren't sure if he was going to win the starting job over Drew Lock, which is just crazy. But I do think that Geno Smith still has an opportunity here. Njigba is going to have a good sophomore season, I think. He still has DK Metcalf to chuck the ball up to. Last year, the offense for the Seahawks just was not it at all, and they were not really done any favors. I definitely think Geno Smith can, rise to the occasion this year, but I don't think that the odds are in his favor to do that, and so that's why I have him at the 17th spot. Number 16, I have Trevor Lawrence. I was not very optimistic about the Jaguars this year. It feels like Trevor Lawrence is kind of that middling quarterback that hasn't quite leapt up to that potential, like a lot of quarterbacks on this list. Another quarterback that I definitely think was overpaid. The Jags were so afraid of testing what their team would look like without Trevor Lawrence that they just decided to, bite the bullet and pay him all this money. I understand the reasoning, but I don't think that he necessarily deserves that money for what he's shown. That comeback win against the Chargers in the playoffs a couple years back really is his one, key thing that he's done in his career with this team. But the potential is very much still there, which is why I have him at 16. At 15, I have Jordan Love. And a lot of people, I'm going to have one more rant about this. I know I talked about this a lot in my division predictions video. I just still don't see the hype about Jordan Love because he went in, he had a really rough start to his season, which is expected because he is in the starting role for the very first time last year. And then he kind of started to put it together, but he still wasn't that good of a quarterback all the way up until like week 9. And then he played like a decent quarterback. He helped his team win, and then they had that run in the playoffs. But still, the Packers just gave incredible amount of money, like top 10 or top 5 even quarterback money based off of this offseason to Jordan Love after he had one good half of the season. And as a Vikings fan, like, go ahead, do that. Like, I love that. That's awesome because, I mean, that's just such a huge, commitment to make. A lot like Trevor Lawrence, but even less of a sample size because we don't even know that Jordan Love is capable of putting together more than one good half of a season, and you're all of a sudden just paying him all this money. All power to the Packers, but I don't understand why they made that decision. I don't think that Jordan Love has shown enough for him to be a top 10 quarterback. And he's a top 8 or top 9 quarterback on so many of these lists. And I don't understand what he's done to warrant that after such a small sample size. Up next, we have Brock Purdy at the 13 spot. And this is a quarterback. First of all, I talked about this in my division video as well. But the 49ers need to count their hours because, yes, this 49ers team has been fantastic. You got Christian McCaffrey. You got all these amazing defensive players like Bosa. And, I mean, way too many players to even name. You've got George Kittle. You've got Brock Purdy, who is a very good game-managing quarterback. But it just doesn't feel like the 49ers are going to be able to maintain this because they're kind of delaying the inevitable, which is that they're going to have to pay Brock Purdy. And how much money are they willing to pay Brock Purdy when, again, he's been an excellent facilitator for these guys, but you just paid Deebo Samuel a massive amount of money last season. You are going to have to continue to pay George Kittle. There's so many defensive players on this roster that you're going to continue to have to pay. And you just signed Brandon Ayuk, who is a borderline wide receiver too, for that much money. I don't know what they're going to do in this upcoming offseason. I don't know if Brock Purdy is going to be able to accept the amount of money that the 49ers can afford to give him. I think that this is kind of the end of the road for the 49ers. They're going to have a really good season again, but I think their days are numbered. But I think number 13, a good spot for Brock Purdy because he has been great in the postseason in what his job is, which is to be a facilitator. And I think it's funny that so many people are in the comments all the time going, well, so much for him being a game manager, he just brought the 49ers to the Super Bowl. It's like, well, yeah, he still is a game manager. When you have that kind of talent around you, all you really have to be is a game manager because your defense and your skill players around you are going to take you to the Super Bowl. I mean, it's just an insane roster. And so I think that the 13th spot is good for Brock Purdy. Number 12, we have Tua. I'm kind of I always go back and forth. I honestly think that Tua is is such an inconsistent quarterback. Um, and the issue with the Dolphins and Tua in general is that last year they were totally exposed in the last few weeks of the regular season and then ended up losing in the wild card round because their offense was just so predictable. And the issue with Tua is that he is so bad when that perfect play call doesn't go as planned. When he is forced to run with the ball, when he's forced to improvise, and when things come crumbling down after their read is guessed or their play falls apart, he just has not been able to adapt and still play well. And that's something that's very, very important in the NFL. You need to be able to, when things don't go as planned, when all of a sudden the game plan completely blows up halfway through the game, and you need to find some other way to win. The Dolphins and Tua need to be better at that. And I don't know if they will be. So maybe this is honestly a little bit high for Tua, but I don't know. We'll have to see. At number 12, I have Jared Goff. Actually, I think I messed up the numbering of that list. So Jordan, okay, so Brock Purdy should have been 14th, Tua is 13th, and then 12th, I have Jared Goff. Jared Goff has his flaws, but he is definitely a good quarterback in this league. He has a lot of weapons around him, but he is able to play perfectly into that Dan Campbell offense. He is able to be aggressive, to take chances down the field, but he also has been fantastic over the last couple years in those fourth down situations. Dan Campbell trusts his team to get the job done in those situations, and he really has performed well. So I think that's what vaults him so high up on this list for me. Obviously, the concerns with him is he did give up some turnovers. He also did have a few clunkers in the middle of the season where he did not play well. But at the end of the day, I do feel very highly about Jared Goff, and I do think he is just on the edge of those top 10 quarterbacks in the league. Next up, we have Matthew Stafford, which is crazy because Matthew Stafford was so low on my list last year just because he had that major injury with his shoulder. I think it was his shoulder, and people were so concerned about his ability to play going into the next season. I honestly thought that might have been it for him. And then he shows up and he plays the way he did last year, and he led his team to the wild card round, just barely losing to his former team in the Detroit Lions. He overcame so much. He overcame the loss of Aaron Donald. This defense got significantly worse for the Rams, and he was still able to maintain his composure and still play fantastically for the Rams. I think he's very deserving of the number 11 spot. Next up, we have Dak Prescott at number 10. Now, I kind of wish I could put him a little bit lower. I definitely think I've been saying this year after year after year. Dak Prescott is pretty much everything that people like to think that Kirk Cousins is. And Kirk Cousins is only one step higher than him on this list, and we'll get to him. But Dak Prescott definitely lacks the ability to play well when he's under pressure, when the game's on the line, and in playoff games, which is why I feel like a lot of times I want to put him lower on the list. But the numbers that he puts up and the wins he gets for these Cowboys really is staggering over the course of his career. And yes, he has a lot of weapons, but in the regular season, he has definitely performed to a pretty crazy degree. And so that's why I feel like I have to put Dak Prescott in the top 10 for quarterbacks. Sorry about that. Next up, we have Kirk Cousins, like I said, at the number 9 spot. With his new team in the Atlanta Falcons, they paid him an absolute king's ransom to come to that team. Do I think he deserves that kind of money? No. But I definitely do think he's a top 10 quarterback in the league. I think that he is still going to put the league on notice this year about how he still, deserves respect in the league. And last year the Vikings won a few games without him, and people are like, "Oh, they can still win without Kirk." Yes, I think the Vikings can still win without Kirk. Not this year, but in upcoming years. But he does bring an extra factor to these teams, and I feel like a lot of his prime time, bad mojo that people always throw around, I don't think that that is always necessarily deserved. I think that he gets really unlucky with having some really difficult matchups in those primetime games, and also he has not had a lot of help with the offensive line and with his defenses in the last few years. And I think that has inflated that bad record in primetime games more than they it would have been otherwise. But Kirk Cousins is a fantastic quarterback. He'll get your guy the ball. He's incredibly reliable, and that's why I have him so high up on this list. Next up, we have Aaron Rodgers at number 8. I still think he's deserving of this spot because, yes, the postseason has been rough for him in the past, but I didn't knock Dak Prescott on that, so I can't really do that for Rodgers either. It's kind of weird because I have to put him at this spot because he's been so good in the past, but then coming off of this injury, I don't really know how he's going to play. Next up, we have CJ Stroud at number 7. This is a guy that I think is going to be in the top 5 by the end of the season. It's just that he only played his one rookie season last year, and so I want to give a little bit of credence to that. And so I easily could have put him in the top 4, honestly, or probably borderline top 5. But I need to see one more year from him. You never know what can happen. Players can have some crazy rookie seasons and then fall back down to earth. So I am confident that he is going to continue to play well, and I have the Texans being the second seed in the AFC this year. But just because he was off his rookie season, I have to put him a little bit lower and at the 7th spot. Then we have Jalen Hurts at number 6. I think that this is when we hit that, elite level. And Jalen Hurts, the Eagles offense completely had a hit a skid at the end of the season, and the offense just was not what it was in the past last year. I don't really know what happened there, but I still do think Jalen Hurts is a huge cornerstone for this Eagles team. I think that he has this really unique ability. He is such an athletic player in general. He can run the ball, but he's not a running quarterback. But he's still capable of those design run plays. The tush push is as good as it is because of him. And not only that, but he can throw absolute dots. He has a lot of help from A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, but he gets everyone the ball when they need it. And despite a few times last year where, again, the offense in general wasn't clicking, he has been insanely clutch already throughout the course of his still pretty young career. Number 5, this might seem biased, but I do have Justin Herbert at number 5. I still think he is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. I think that he is capable of moving up even on this list. I think that after this season, we'll know for sure if he deserves to go up or down because now he is hopefully going to have a fully healthy season. He's not going to have a whole lot of options this year, which is why I think he's going to be villainized yet again. But what he did last year is completely overshadowed by the fact that he was injured for the last half and just how horribly that defense played in the first half of the season. I mean, with a decent defense, I think the Chargers easily could have been in the playoff picture at the time of Herbert's injury. I think that he's a absolute specimen of a player with a rocket for an arm. And yes, some decision making things still need to be ironed out, but he is an absolutely phenomenal player in the league. At number four, now this is where the second 2 through 4 really is a toss up for me because these three players are at that elite level. But at number 4, I have Lamar Jackson, just an absolutely incredible player, pretty much Jalen Hurts, but even faster, running the football. He is a running quarterback. He's a designed running quarterback, but I think the Ravens did a great job last year of trying to limit that at least enough to try and prevent injuries. They kind of revamped the offense so that the RPO was still a big part of it, but Lamar Jackson didn't really feel like he was pressured to run the ball nearly as much, and that did keep him healthy last season. He is I mean, he could be just a running back, and yet he still is able to launch the ball. Um, he was able to finally pull himself out of that postseason rut and play phenomenally against the Houston Texans in the divisional round. He did lose in the AFC championship, but that was just a really rough game played by the Ravens through and through. Um, and so I think that Lamar Jackson is a top 4 quarterback in the league. And then at 3, we have Joe Burrow. Um, and Joe Burrow is a quarterback that caught so much unnecessary hate in the offseason. I don't really know what spurred it. He bleached his hair, and there were some contract disputes with the Bengals, and all of a sudden people are like, oh, the Bengals, all the locker room issues. Like, I just don't understand what the problem is. Joe Burrow bleached his hair. Yes, it's kind of weird. Yes, he looks like Eminem back in the 2000s. But I do think that he's still an absolutely elite quarterback. He had 1 year where the team struggled offensively, and then he got hurt and was out for the year, and all of a sudden people forgot that he is absolutely incredible. Took the Bengals to the Super Bowl and then to 2 more straight AFC Championship appearances. And he is just so cool in the pocket. No lead is safe when he is around and on the team. He is absolutely a top 3 quarterback. Number 2, I have Josh Allen. Obviously, the big pitfall of Josh Allen is that he does throw a lot of interceptions, but when he puts up the numbers that he puts up, it's almost worth it. And I honestly, I think it is worth it because he is able to absolutely elevate everyone around him. He is a runner in a very different way than Lamar Jackson is. He doesn't have the speed he does, but he is just such a physical freak. He's able to mow down players. That run that he had in the first round of the playoffs last year was absolutely insane. The fact that he is able to have that escapability, the fact that he is able to run the way he can, and the fact that he has probably the best arm, well, second best arm in the entire NFL. Well, okay, third best arm in the entire NFL, behind Mahomes and probably Herbert. He is absolutely incredible and deserves the second spot. And then finally at number 1, we have Patrick Mahomes. I think that there is no debate here. He is the most talented quarterback through and through that we've ever seen in the NFL. And he just, when the moment gets bigger, he becomes better. And that's the long and short of it. It doesn't matter what the situation is. He could be playing on one leg if the situation put him in that, and he is just able to somehow pull a cat out of his bag. He is legitimately a magician on the field. Watching him play is just like sitting there in disbelief. And so he absolutely deserves that number 1 spot. So there you go, the top 20 quarterbacks. I'm glad that I was able to record that video within this stream, because, again, I wish I would have been able to make more videos before the season starts. Let's go over a few matchups in the first week of the season that I'm really excited to see. I kind of had to breeze through them a little bit more for my predictions video because if I try and break down these picks too much, I end up with an hour-long video and no one really wants to see all that analysis. One game that I think should be really interesting is the Packers and Eagles. Obviously, it's a tough one for Vikings fans to watch because we hate both teams pretty much equally. Or we have to hate the Packers more. So I will be rooting for the Eagles for the only time in this entire season that I will be rooting for the Eagles. But it's, I think, the first game ever played in Brazil, which will be really interesting. I always love when there's a new stadium that I've never watched an NFL game in. I always love when they do these random things where they play in random stadiums, especially in like the MLB and stuff. So I'm a big fan of going to different countries and playing in these new interesting stadiums. The Eagles are an interesting team where they had a really rough year last year, like I mentioned, but I don't think that's going to last. Lost Jason Kelsey, but I still think that they're one of the best teams in the league, unfortunately. And the Packers, it's going to be interesting to see just how much of a will they be that team. You know, there's always a team that plays really well in the playoffs, even though they were a low seed, and then all of a sudden they play like a team that is championship caliber the next season. I don't think so. I think that we've got to pump the brakes a little bit on the Packers, but it'll be again interesting to see how all of that plays out. I'm really excited to see the Steelers and Falcons just because I can't wait to see what Kirk Cousins does in a different uniform. I'm kind of afraid to see what happens because it's going to kind of suck if Kirk comes in and just plays absolutely lights out in a new uniform and it was like, oh, the Vikings were the problem. I don't think it'll be that extreme, but I do think he will play well. The Steelers defense is going to be a really good first test for him and for this new Falcons offense. So it should be fun to see Kirk throwing to Drake London, maybe trying to actually kickstart Kyle Pitts' career because it's been pretty lacking so far this season. And then we have the Cardinals at the Bills. Is another one I'm excited to see. Not necessarily because I think it's going to be a good game. I think the Bills should win that one handily. Um, but it's always exciting to see Josh Allen. And then on the other side, Kyler Murray is a huge storyline this year. It's a make or break season for him. A quarterback knows that he is on the hot seat, it's always fun to see how he responds to that. And of course, Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm excited to see as well. And then the big game, probably the most exciting game for me this season or this year, this week, I got there, is the Texans at the Colts. It should be a lot of fun to see C.J. Stroud play again, but also Anthony Richardson has had so much hype building up this season. It's an AFC South rivalry. I just can't wait to see that game take place. And then finally, you've got some really fun games coming up. You know, the Cowboys and the Browns should be a really good matchup. The Commanders and Buccaneers should be fun because, again, I've been super high on Jaden Daniels ever since the draft process started. I think he's going to be a generational player. I just have a really good feeling about him. I can't put my finger on why, but that should be fun to watch him for the first time. Sunday Night Football is a rematch of the wild card round between the Rams and the Lions. Once again, Stafford returns to Detroit, and we see if the Lions are able to pick up right where they left off after losing in the NFC Championship game last year. So many cool storylines there. And then probably the game with the most storylines, which is Monday, September 9th. Monday Night Football, Jets at 49ers. You've got the 49ers who were in the Super Bowl last year. The Jets have Aaron Rodgers coming back after tearing his Achilles in this Monday night game last year. Not only is he coming back from injury, and we actually get to see his first game fully as a Jets quarterback, we also get to see him play against the team that he thought was going to draft him all the way back in what was it, 2001 or 2002 in that draft, or maybe that's a little bit early. I think it's 2007. Um, the Jets or the 49ers passed up on Aaron Rodgers and ended up picking Alex Smith instead. And then Rodgers went to the Packers, had to play behind Brett Favre. So it's always a revenge game, I'm sure, when he plays the 49ers. And he's played the 49ers plenty of times in the playoffs and has lost time after time after time. So it's also kind of that whole storyline as well. So many exciting games in this first week of the season, starting right here tonight with the Chiefs and the Ravens. I think I know I said that the stream was going to be a whole hour. I think that I'm actually just going to do this one last thing and maybe end it a little bit early, so apologies for that. Um, but I'm going to go over the fantasy team that I drafted. I I always do one with my family. And again, I've never really been a big fan of multiple teams. I know my friend Hayden, who I went to high school with, he has like 10 leagues, and I just could never do that. I feel like it's fun for me to just only pay attention to these players. Because then you get into that situation where you're in like the playoffs with both your leagues, and you've got a player that you are rooting for in one league and against in another league, and it just doesn't seem that fun to me. So I just have the one team. So you can let me know in the comments what you think of my team. Grade it for me. It's a 12 team non PPR. So you PPR, if you're not familiar with fantasy football, PPR is like a running back catches a pass, they get a point for that pass or for that catch. For non PPR, it's just straight like you get yards for rushing or passing or catching the football. You do actually get 1 point for every 5 catches in our league. But running backs don't get like I hate when running backs get rewarded for catching passes for like a 2 yard gain. You know, you can have a wide receiver catch a 10 yard pass, um, and then a running back catches a 1 yard pass, and it's pretty much the same thing. And I've never understood the PPR thing. But yeah, it's a 12 team PPR league. Basically, the way it is for us is one quarterback. You have two running backs, two wide receivers. You have a running back slash wide receiver spot. So it's kind of like a flex, but without tight end. And then you have a tight end and flex spot. So it's kind of like your typical traditional layout. Um, but you um, but you have an extra running back wide receiver spot to use as you see fit. So my quarterback, I ended up picking Jaden Daniel, or actually, okay, well that's the cat's out of the bag there. But I'm gonna go over round by round, kind of what I picked, um, because I have that pulled up here. So my very first pick was Amon-Ra St. Brown. I had the seventh pick in the draft, and so I passed up on Tyreek Hill. I know that's crazy, but I just had this weird feeling that Tyreek Hill was going to get hurt this season, and I just didn't trust the Dolphins all that much. Not to mention the Dolphins have such a crowded wide receiver room all of a sudden. I just, for some reason, felt better about Amon-Ra. I wanted a wide receiver that was going to for sure get me points week after week after week. And he was the safest and also best pick at the time, in my opinion. And then going down the line, I ended up also going with Jahmyr Gibbs. Um, I actually, you know what? I'm starting to forget what round I picked him in. So let's just go down the line. So we have Jaden Daniels. Um, I picked as my quarterback. I have a really good feeling about him. Like I said, the first few weeks might be a little bit slow, but I definitely think he's gonna reach that top 15, if not top 10 quarterback caliber already by midseason. I have a really good feeling that he is going to perform well. Not to mention he's got Terry McLaurin to loft the ball to deep. Running back one for me is Jahmyr Gibbs. I had a really good feeling about him as well. I like to kind of double down on Detroit with him and Amon-Ra. And then my RB2, this is kind of giving you a clue of how my draft went in terms of the running back room. My RB2 is Jaylen Warren, who is, fighting for snaps with Najee Harris on the Pittsburgh Steelers. And those are the only two starting caliber running backs I have currently on my team because I went all in on wide receivers. I had Amon-Ra, like I mentioned, and then I got Deebo Samuel. I ended up getting him later in the draft than expected. He fell maybe a full round lower than I expected him to. And so many people kept passing up on him because of the injury concerns, and I was concerned. But it got to a point where I was just like, okay, this is a round two talent that you're taking in like the late third round. I had to pick him. I feel really good about where I picked him, even with the injury risk. I think it's worth it. He is my wide receiver. Well, I'd honestly say wide receiver 3 because I've got Stephon Diggs that I also drafted. Yes, he kind of took a hit in his draft capital, because he's on a new team, because he's going to be competing with targets for multiple different players. We got Tank Dell, we've got Nico Collins, both who C.J. Stroud had his rookie season throwing to, so obviously they have that connection. But I still do feel really good that Stephon Diggs is still going to be able to pull out a really good season. And then at wide receiver 4, I have 4 wide receivers in my starting lineup. I have Marvin Harrison Jr. I think I have a good mix here of like Amon-Ra St. Brown and Stephon Diggs are going to for sure get me points week to week. And then we have Deebo Samuel and Marvin Harrison, which have a lot of great potential. Deebo, if he can stay healthy, and Marvin Harrison, if he can, come into his own as a rookie. And then I have Brock Bowers at the tight end position. I didn't really put a whole lot of value into the tight end position this year. I was kind of like, okay, if Travis Kelce falls into my lap, or if the other one I was really high on was Andrews or Mark Andrews, I would pick one of those two. But then they fell, and then I wasn't really in that area where it was worth it to pick a tight end, so I just decided to keep picking wide receivers. But Brock Bowers, another rookie that I definitely think could play really well this year. Ended up with a Bengals defense that I could definitely just kind of stream as the season goes along. Koo is my kicker, but who really cares? And then on my bench, a few players I'm excited about. Xavier Worthy. I'm kind of hoping that my wide receivers can all play well on the starting roster, and then Worthy can go crazy in the first few weeks of the season, or have like a big breakout first few weeks as a rookie, and then I can trade him away for a good running back. Because I picked him kind of later in the draft, because he's kind of an unknown. And so I'm hoping that he can come out of nowhere and I can use that as some great draft capital, or have some really good depth as well for my team. Um, I got Ty Chandler for the Vikings and Trey Benson for the Cardinals, strictly because they are playing as backups behind aging running backs that have injury history. Aaron Jones has a history of injury when he played with the Packers, now with the Vikings. Obviously, hoping he doesn't get hurt because I'm a Vikings fan, but I kind of picked Ty Chandler specifically for that reason. And on top of that, for the Cardinals as well, James Conner is in his his age 29 season, I'm trying to say. And so he has also had some injury history. I legitimately just picked them because I thought maybe there would be some injury concerns there that they might be able to play with. I got Joshua Palmer just because I felt like there was a chance. He is really one of the best options for the Chargers this season, and so just for volume alone, I wanted to get him. And then I got Justin Herbert in the very last round, just because I wanted to snag him. Because I wanted to take a chance. Just even though he has really no options this year, I don't know. Maybe taking a chance on a quarterback that is a brand new head coach that knows how to win. You can never go wrong with that, because Herbert again is a top 5 quarterback to me in terms of his talent. He just doesn't have any options around him. But hey, there are other quarterbacks in this league that were not stopped by that last year either. So we'll have to see there. And then I drafted T.J. Hawkinson and put him in my IR. I was like, even with the quarterbacks that are going to be throwing to him this year, he's still one of the best tight ends in the league. I might as well snag him. My league, 8 of the 12 teams go to the playoffs, and so every regular season matchup doesn't really matter quite as much. As long as you make it into the playoffs, it doesn't matter. So I like to try and snag these players that are later in the draft that might lose me a couple matchups in the early season, but that, as long as you can win half your games, you're in the playoffs. So you might as well just go after the players that are going to help you in the last half of the season rather than just the whole season in general. And then I got Cole Kmet off waivers just because I had Hawkinson on the IR. But let me know in the comments what you think of that draft. I thought it was okay. It's just I'm really banking on these running backs not getting hurt, because if Jahmyr Gibbs or Jalen Warren goes down, I legitimately don't have a starting running back on my roster right now. It's crazy. But it's 6:45. I think I'm going to end the stream there. But thank you so much for tuning in to this one. I'm going to be trying to do more streams like this throughout the season with a little more content because once the season starts, I can talk about a lot more. Maybe I'll do them for like Sunday Night Football as the season goes along. I'll continue to do them for the playoffs as well. And I'll have a little more content for you. This was kind of more just a chill stream to talk about, getting hyped up for the start of the season. But thanks for watching this one, and have a great night, guys.